Hey everyone, here is another video that I think you might like. It's about yet another interesting, mysterious, and very strange story that happened in New York City. So I'm kind of going for more of a storytelling kind of element with these videos now. So I recommend just getting a good drink, some snacks, and probably just curling up in bed while you listen to this. And here we begin. So our story here today is about Lara Prychodko. Lara Nadia Aniki Prychodko was born on June 23, 1970 in Toronto, Canada. Not much is really known about her very early life, but she is remembered as having been a vivacious and caring woman who was deeply loved by her friends and family. She knew people across Canada, the USA, and Europe. She seemed to be fairly popular, and her father recalled that she was very protective of her siblings. At some point in time, Lara went to an art school and then went on to the University of Toronto, where she became vice president of her sorority. She would go on to model in New York City and then became a conference event organizer for major corporations. One of the ones listed was actually WebMD. Her father recalled her as being extremely sociable, with great interpersonal networking skills, which made her so successful to begin with. Her sister Talia remembers her as being kind, generous, and had found the good in everyone. She was recalled as being a beautiful soul. In 2003, Lara married a man named David Slatchet, who owned a construction company in Manhattan, New York. And somewhere around 2006, they had a son together. Around 2014 or 2016, the exact date isn't really listed, despite how recent this story is, but bear with me. Around 2014 or 2016, Lara and David filed for divorce, with some sources stating that Lara is the one who decided to file. Their divorce, or the process of it, has been described as acrimonious. The process of this divorce was taking upwards of 2 years. The various sources I was able to find about this story stated that her and David were fighting over basically millions of dollars worth of assets. Much of this seems to have been property, expensive property that they had lived at or owned at least. There are various sources that state that Lara was dating the CEO named Wayne Gattinella, who at some point in the past was in charge of WebMD, and if we remember, Lara had worked for WebMD at some point in time. In 2015, though another source had stated 2012, so between 2012 and 2015, Lara lost custody of her son because she had a DUI charge. She had been granted overnight visitation rights after meeting with a counselor and was scheduled to see her son on July 11th, 2018. Various sources state that in the last few days of her life, Lara was in good spirits as her favorite team had beat out Belgium in the World Cup semifinals, and she had anticipated regaining custody of her son. She was last seen around 4:10 to 4:20 p.m. on July 10th, 2018, as she was entering her building located at 1 Irving Place. Not even an hour later, after she entered her building, a 911 call would be made at the Zeckendorf Towers as a mangled body was found in the garbage compactor. It was unknown how exactly, but Lara Prychodko had managed to fall 27 flights to her death down the trash chute, which was just steps away from her front door. One source I read stated that her body was crushed from multiple angles. Lara's death was considered an accident, and the New York City medical examiner deemed her cause of death as multiple blunt impact injuries. Interestingly, her blood alcohol level was 0.29, which is high enough to pretty much be considered alcohol poisoning. Lara's manner of death was apparently listed as undetermined. The circumstances of Laura's death were immediately brought into question by her family, who of course found it to be extremely strange. Her father even pointed out that if she wanted to commit suicide, who would do it that way? Which is a fair question. The trash chute at the Zeckendorf Towers was about 15 by 18 inches. For reference, Lara Prychodko was 5'10" and 130 pounds. Her father stated, "It's simply impossible. It's ridiculous. What baffles me is that the only people that seems to give this preposterous idea some credence are the investigating authorities." Laura's case actually caught the attention of Dr. Michael Baden, who was New York City's former medical examiner. And he's been quoted as having said in multiple articles, "I've never seen a drunk person be able to go into a narrow chute and go feet first down 27 stories. That's extremely unusual." He looked at the autopsy report and stated, "My opinion is that there's enough information that this should be investigated as a homicide." He also ended up looking at crime scene photos, and apparently Laura's shirt was found ripped. On top of that, there was a pale line around her neck that showed blue coloration or cyanosis. Dr. Baden suggested that Lara could have been strangled to death before being put into the trash chute. Autopsy photos showed very little internal bleeding anywhere except for Laura's neck, which suggested that she was dead before reaching the trash compactor. After Laura's death, her estranged husband apparently immediately took control of all the properties they had and drained her bank accounts. A few articles about her death were posted in 2018. Not very much was available, at least on the newspaper archives. Granted, at least from the time that I am recording this video, this is a pretty recent case, so typically you could find articles about Laura's death just on the internet. But anyway, on July 12th of 2018, the Daily News posted, "Woman shoot death eyed as homicide." In this article, it was stated that initially Laura's death was being investigated as a homicide case. In this article, it stated that Laura's body was found around 4:55 p.m. actually by a custodian of the building, though other articles from just around the internet stated that the super of the Zeckendorf Towers found Lara. So either way, I mean, there's little variances here, but somebody found her, and she was found, outside of the trash chute. The article stated, though, that surveillance footage showed that Lara was walking alone in the hallway like there was nothing wrong, for actually just a short period of time, like right before her death. Her handbag was actually found discarded by an elevator on the 27th floor. On December 20th, 2018, the Daily News then posted another article, so this was about, 5 months later after her death, where then it was stated that Laura's death was not foul play. Here, the medical examiner stated that there was no suspicion of foul play, and she had died of the multiple blunt impact injuries. It really doesn't state necessarily why there was this change. Who knows, right? In various articles from the New York Post, which you can just read online, more information was divulged, which really changes the initial idea that there was no foul play. In their articles, they divulged that Lara had been convicted in 2012 for driving intoxicated and had been battling a drinking problem that was actually brought on by a growing brain tumor, which her attorney, Eric Seif, was quoted as having said, "I know that she was absolutely convinced the pain and dependency she was experiencing that had her drinking was directly related to the growing brain tumor." Which, I will point out, it's actually not abnormal for people to start acting differently once they have brain tumors. That is a documented thing. So, in this article, it stated that multiple sources believed that Laura had been suffering from health issues before her death. Her lawyer stated that she had turned her life around and actually had regularly passed professionally monitored drug and alcohol tests. And he was quoted again having said, "I have not been aware of a single test that she failed the last year. For the last 6 months, the tests have been professionally supervised." At the time of her death, Laura and her estranged husband had actually been in mediation, which had been postponed for a month. Another article from the New York Post stated that someone had seen Laura's estranged husband, David, before the police confirmed that the body in the trash chute was Laura's. Supposedly, he was just acting normally, wasn't sad or anything. Which, on one hand, you wouldn't think that would be weird. I mean, the body wasn't identified as Laura's yet, so why would he be upset? But then again, we have to remember Laura was scheduled to have a visitation with her son, and of course she never showed up. So it does make you wonder, why wasn't her husband frustrated or upset that she didn't come get her son? On the other hand, though, residents from the area that David lived, which was in Chelsea, they had stated it had seemed like Laura had a drinking problem and was regularly seen stumbling drunk when she used to live there in the Chelsea residence. One person was quoted in the article having said, "She would come home drunk, like she couldn't walk. I don't remember a specific time, but I remember many times, more than once a week, where they would see her drunk." At the time of her death, Laura hadn't lived in the apartment building at Zeckendorf Towers for very long and wasn't very well known to those around her. There really wasn't much else posted after 2018 when Laura initially died, and it was pretty quiet up until 2020. That year, 2020, the New York Post revealed actually some more details about Laura after her death. On May 28, 2018, Laura had apparently sent an email to her lover, Wayne Gattinella. Now, remember earlier she was dating Wayne, but it turned out that this was basically an extramarital affair. So, on May 28, 2018, she emailed him, and her email said, "I just woke up missing my beautiful, amazing son, whom I've lost because of my love of you. You said you would take care of private school, but you are not. My child deserves the same privilege yours do." So, while they were dating or in this affair, obviously Wayne Gattinella was still married to, at the time, his wife. This email was sent at 6:05 a.m. that day, and the article from the New York Post stated that Laura also wanted him to leave his wife that he had been with for 40 years. Wayne Gattinella owned a lot, and I mean a lot, of expensive realty in New York, and it was, worth millions upon millions of dollars. So it actually turned out that Wayne Gattinella was the one that rented out the 2-bedroom apartment at the Zeckendorf Towers with Laura, and this was according to apparently a January 2018 rental agreement. The prior statement of Laura not having lived in her apartment for very long was true. It had barely been 6 or 7 months. 7 months after he signed the lease, Laura was found dead. And apparently the rent, and this is even just back in 2018, the rent for this apartment was $6,500 a month. Expensive. And very interestingly, this article from 2020 was the first one to point out that Laura had shared the apartment with Wayne Gattinella. So, one of Laura's friends had stated that there was no way that Laura could have thrown herself down the trash chute. The friend also stated that the atmosphere at the apartment was toxic, and Laura was constantly drinking and fighting with Wayne Gattinella about his marriage. Despite this, the friend stated that Laura was full of plans for the future. At the time, apparently, Laura was getting ready to launch a line of skincare products, and the friend was quoted as having said, "She told me she was going to have one last big party and then get sober. All she wanted was to get her life back." Apparently, this last big party was at Ibiza, Spain, and apparently Paris, France. They went to both places, where her and Wayne Gattinella decided to celebrate her 48th birthday. But before they even went on the trip, Wayne's wife found out about the relationship because she found out about a charge for a gym membership that was put on her husband's credit card, and of course this gym membership was for Laura. So the friend recalled that Wayne was always buying Laura expensive things, and they had luxury vehicles, expensive clothes, and ate at the best restaurants in Manhattan. Before Laura's death, there was actually tension in their relationship, with him becoming rude to her, especially after his wife discovered Laura's gym membership that he paid for. When this happened, Wayne refused to call Laura, and one friend stated that the relationship between the two had actually been going on for nearly a decade, and Laura was tired of being his mistress. When you look at the timeline, then it seems like Laura had been in this extramarital affair with Wayne potentially before she ever filed for divorce. There was a separate email that Laura sent on May 28th, 2018, where it said, "I can never get to you, so I'm so over this system. You either stop having me blocked, everyone knows it's just you who can't admit, or go back to a hidden phone. Your choice, but if you were honest now, I don't think it would be as dramatic. They all know." Apparently, Wayne Gattinella was never named as a suspect in Laura's death. And actually, months after Laura died, his wife filed for divorce, and it was finalized in 2020. In 2023, Laura's father filed for a wrongful death suit against her estranged husband, David, but nothing seems to have ever happened or came out of this. A celebration for Laura's life was held at the Jarrett Funeral Home in Toronto on July 27, 2018. In an obituary for her, her family asked that donations in Laura's name be made to the Acoustic Neuroma Society of Canada and/or Planned Parenthood. So, my question is, what do you think? Do you think that Laura might have been killed by her estranged husband, David? Do you think that it might have had something to do with her lover, Wayne Gattinella? Or perhaps did she somehow, in an extremely drunken state, decide to shove herself down the trash chute? Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching.